Ladies and gentlemen, Ethereum is currently going absolutely insane. We made a video on Ethereum yesterday discussing the parabolic rally that Ethereum is seeing and how that could eventually lead to a trigger for a broader altcoin market rally. But actually Bitcoin in the last, let's say, almost 2 weeks at this point, about 12 days at this point, has been ranging sideways. Not much going on for Bitcoin. And so I want to take this opportunity of calm in the market, at least for Bitcoin, to analyze and to recap on what is the most important levels, what are the most important levels, the most important things to watch. For example, things like what Bitcoin needs to break to continue this macro leg, what Bitcoin needs to avoid breaking to avoid entering a bear market, how long left we have in the cycle, and how we can identify a potential Bitcoin top when it comes. Although we've covered these questions before, on various different videos here and there spontaneously, I want to make this video to collectively bring it all together and to make kind of a video describing basically everything you need to know for Bitcoin. So guys, before we get into it, please check out the Bitunix Exchange. A lot of people ask me what exchange I use as a trader. I use the Bitunix Exchange, and I don't have a contract with them. I haven't signed anything with them. I don't work for them. I advertise them on my own accord. With my referral link down below, you can get a 15% trading fee discount permanently attached to your account, as well as up to 8,000 USDT in rewards just by signing up with my link down below. Why would you sign up? Well, it's global. It's non-KYC. It's never been hacked before. It's got all of the functions and pairs that you would expect for a major exchange. For that reason, I use it. And I implore you to consider using it as well. Sign up with my link to help out the channel, help out yourself. Cheers. Starting out with the thing you've probably heard 1,000 times by now on the Bitcoin linear chart, and that's important, not the logarithmic chart, but the linear chart. There is a very major line that was previously acting as very major resistance for Bitcoin, which we've currently actually managed to flip. We're in the process of flipping it right now. Broke above it, consolidating right on top of it, and we could be seeing in a very short period of time, potentially, and ideally, of course, a bounce from this level, which we've currently retested on 3 consecutive occasions over here, and just over here yesterday. Now, this could be seen as some sort of triangle formation, although identifying the top line of resistance is not currently something we can do. It depends on how you draw it. You can draw it in many various different ways, and I don't really see any momentum indicator validation for the correct way to draw it. So I just see this as a pattern that is potentially still developing. What we do know is that the basis of this pattern is coming all the way backwards from 2017, as I just explained. What many people don't know, and another thing I've discussed in this YouTube channel countless times, is that there is also resistance here. Now, you might think, of course, there's resistance. We've come up and we've formed resistance here at $123,000. But that's not an arbitrary level that Bitcoin just randomly rejected from. That level actually comes from 2 separate things. One of them is the power law chart, and more specifically, the green center line of the power law chart. You can see the rejection at 124,000 right there. And you can see rejections, it's similar kind of regions from that green line historically on Bitcoin over the last 18 months. And the other level, the other chart that shows that 124,000 is more than just a random arbitrary level is this chart right here. It's a chart that measures the angle of appreciation, the angle of, incline between tops and bottoms historically on Bitcoin. And all we need to do is extrapolate that number forward. It halves each time. So we see a 50% reduction in the angle of ascension between bottoms and tops. We extrapolate those numbers forward to this cycle. We see currently that line should be at about 124,000. So there's 2 separate independently verifiable charts which show you that $124,000 and slightly rising, actually that level is slightly rising, is a valid resistance zone. It's not just random. So there is resistance around 124. It's probably doing something like this, rising very gradually, and there is support back here, stepping backwards from, as we said, 2017. And these make up, in my view, 2 very critical levels for Bitcoin. Now, one of them is probably more important than the other, and I'll say that very clearly. It's very obvious to me that if Bitcoin breaks above the upper level, which again comes from these 2 charts I've just showed you, it would be breaking above, in this case, a resistance line or a variation of resistance line that has existed since 2013, and hence we would see a major macro move simply from that breakout. However, if Bitcoin breaks down back below the line we just broke above, I wouldn't necessarily be convinced that we'd be in a breakdown yet. I'd actually want to be seeing Bitcoin break below a neckline of resistance we held, currently sitting at around 110,000. because I would be concerned that if we dropped briefly below the support line, that it could be a fake out or a trap, which you generally see in regions of high market interest, okay? Especially when the interest is isolated to things outside of Bitcoin. You can see Bitcoin fake out, that leads to a massive drop in Ethereum, which is currently flying, and then Bitcoin coming back up again. It's a way to reset the market, happens all the time. It's called a fake out, a flush out, whatever you want to call it. And therefore, just to wrap up on what the two most important levels for Bitcoin are right now, they are the two levels in red right here. The red level on the upper hand coming from these two charts, sitting at $124,000 currently and gradually moving upwards, and the level below being a horizontal neckline, which we'd be using for validation of a breakdown of this yellow line right here. The yellow line itself actually is important, but it's only when we get below this red line at 110 that we can be sure that yellow line is actually broken and that it's not just a fake out. So those are the levels right now that matter for Bitcoin, and those two levels will basically decide the fate of the next macro move. So until we break 124,000 or 110,000, I actually see Bitcoin pretty much as ranging, and I don't really see what's going on in Bitcoin in the short term is massively important for that reason. Not only not massively important, but also very difficult to analyze. It's very difficult to analyze the short-term charts on Bitcoin because we have no historical data from this price range. And so we only have about 2 weeks of data from this price range, which is not really much at all. That's why I'm stepping away from short-term predictions and why I'm even making this video in the first place. But it's important to note, and moving on to the next topic here, it's important to note that Bitcoin is in a broader upwards trend on the macro scale. That's obvious. If it's not obvious to you, I don't know what would be, okay? Obviously, we're seeing higher lows, okay, and higher highs. That's all a macro uptrend is, and this is happening within the bounds of the broader 4-year cycle on Bitcoin. 4-year cycle, date range trend on Bitcoin, an umbrella trend, that meaning a trend that encompasses many other micro trends, some of which you can see in the writing on the screen here. That writing is color coded to the date range measurements, which you can also see on the screen here. So for example, if you take a look at the pink writing, 1064 days from bottom to top, you can see the pink date range measurement, and that actually correlates to the writing. So go ahead and pause the video if you haven't seen this before and take a look at these micro trends, and also note they don't just randomly, measure random things. They all come together, which is why it's called an umbrella trend, to come together and predict and observe that the next likely top on Bitcoin, according to the 4-year cycle, will be around October this year. So for that reason, it is relatively safe to assume. Not certain, we can't bet the kids' lives on this. We can't, put every penny on this, but it is relatively likely that we could see a top around October, and therefore we'd have 4 months left in the cycle. Now, obviously, again, we can't be certain about this, and for that reason, we need to look at alternative methods for finding out when the top may be. And the second caveat here is that that only tells us when the top would be, not where the top would be in terms of price. Now, these charts, which I mentioned before, could help with that potentially. If they do not break. For example, if we keep holding resistance at 124,000 roughly until October, and then we come up in October and test it once more, that would be reason to believe that this actually has held once more, and like the price cycles, it has marked the top. At October, this would be at about 130,000. Now, as soon as we break 130,000, that becomes invalid. The same thing can be said about this power law chart, which also says 130,000 in October. And so, basically, as soon as Bitcoin crosses above 130,000, we have no real metric to analyze or predict where the Bitcoin price top would be based on charts. All we can do at that point is use indicators that have historically predicted the top and watch them very closely. So, for example, the 2-week chart on Bitcoin, the 2-week RSI on Bitcoin, has this definitive resistance line, which has marked every major macro top on Bitcoin, historically speaking. Very few exceptions. And it has been marked, again, every major macro top on Bitcoin has been marked. And so if we were to come upwards, break this current triangle we are seeing, which would probably happen on the break of 124,000, and test that level again, there would be reason to believe that that is the macro top. We don't have the price. We don't know where the price will be when that occurs. But if we get to that level, we can be quite sure that at least this is a major resistance zone. And if it happens within October, within the deadline of the 4-year cycle, we can be relatively sure that's actually a real top, especially if we react negatively from that price level. It's not just the 2-week chart that says that, it's also the 1-month chart. 1-month chart, just like the 2-week chart, has predicted tops and bottoms based on its RSI momentum indicator resistance. Historically, it's had a 100% success rate, and so if we tested that level again around October, and more importantly, or almost, I guess, equally as importantly, I should have said more importantly there, if it happens at the same time as the 2-week chart is testing resistance, you can be very confident that the top is in. So there are indicators like these RSI momentum resistance lines, which have historically predictive tops, which we'll be watching again quite closely this time. They don't give us price estimations of where the top will be, but we can react to them. Reactive indicators is what I like to call them. And those reactions to those indicators triggering will be especially important if they happen in October, which is when the 4-year cycle is expecting a top. It's all about lining up certain independent variables, and if they come together nicely, if they fit together nicely like a jigsaw puzzle, it makes perfect sense to mark that as the top or predict that to be the top. If only one of them comes together, like for example, if we only see this 1 month chart resistance come in and it happens at a random time like next month instead of October, then we can't really be certain the top is in. We can only look with caution and see how we react to that level. At that point, we could break at this level and go even further upwards, like we could be doing, for example, with these channel formations. But this is just some discussion we need to be having more and more often as we approach cyclical deadlines and as we approach these levels and indicators for resistance, which have previously marked tops. But the overarching good news is that right now, not only do we have 3 months left in the cycle from a 4-year cycle perspective, we also have plenty of room left to run from a indicator perspective, independent from the 4-year cycle. So I think those are the only real big things you kind of need to know for Bitcoin right now. Like, there's obviously many things you probably should know, many things that it's helpful to know, but in terms of the things you absolutely need to know, it's these levels here, these 3 lines on the screen, the 2 ones in red being the most important ones. It's also, understanding the 4-year cycle itself and how much time we have left in the cycle. And then it's understanding indicators which have previously been used to mark tops, which could be used again in this cycle as well. The rest of the things I find very important right now actually come from the Ethereum charts and the altcoin charts, which we discussed extensively in yesterday's video. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested. I think that's a very underrated video right there. So just wanted to use this moment here of peace and quiet to a relative extent, for Bitcoin at least, to analyze and recap some of the important charts. Not much new information is being displayed here today, but definitely important to keep these things at the front of your minds as we move forward. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe, leave a like, comment, and also check out the Bitunix Exchange. A lot of people ask me what exchange I use as a trader. I use the Bitunix Exchange, and I don't have a contract with them. I haven't signed anything with them. I don't work for them. I advertise them on my own accord. With my referral link down below, you can get a 15% trading fee discount permanently attached to your account, as well as up to 8,000 USDT in rewards just by signing up with my link down below. Why would you sign up? Well, it's global, it's non-KYC, it's never been hacked before, it's got all the functions and pairs that you would expect for a major exchange. For that reason, I use it. And I implore you to consider using it as well. Sign up with my link to help out the channel, help out yourself. Cheers.